Alright, what up guys? It's me, and welcome to another episode of Squid Game in Unity. So, for those who don't know about what this series is, Squid Game was a hit Netflix show in 2021 where contestants compete in a series of games for a big money grand prize. The game we're going to be making today is a game called Marbles, and there's a little bit of a caveat to this that I'm going to explain in a second. There we go. So, the rules of the game are pretty simple. Players are told to find one other person to partner with. Each player, or members of every pair, will compete against each other in a marble game of their choosing. That's where it gets dicey. Each player has to have 10 marbles, and the winner is whoever manages to take their opponent's 10 marbles in 30 minutes. So, the way the series works is I introduce the game like so, then I make a rough draft of the game, then after that I'll walk through the rough draft, how the code works, things like that, and then I'll make the final draft, so I'll put actual good graphics in, a little bit more controls, things like that, and then we'll have the finished game. Now this one's a little bit different. Like I said, there's a little bit of a caveat with the rule of each members of every pair compete against each other in a marble game of their choosing. So, there's a couple different ways I could handle this. I know I talked about it in episode 4 a lot, but the entire point of this series is A, it's fun for me, and B, I just like exploring the logic that goes into these games, thinking about, the decisions that goes into every move. So I'm gonna just choose a marble game and program it, and we're gonna call it good enough. If I was putting this game out, or if I wanted to spend several more hours on this game than I have the ability to currently, then we could do like several different marble games, but for right now, we're just going to do one marble game, and here's what I have written down. Now, I wrote this down probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago, so I haven't read through this. So fair warning, this might be slightly stuttering. But the game that we're going to be playing is a simple one. So simply, we're going to choose a number between 0 and 5, and then we're going to have a computer be the other player. If our number is less than the computer's, then the computer gets our marbles, and if our number is higher, we get theirs. And then the first to 20 marbles wins. So we're going to see how we can make that work. Without further ado, yes, it worked. We're going to go over to Unity. I need to fix the cropping on my capture card apparently. But we're going to go over to Unity, and I now have a marble scene where I'm going to attempt to make this run. I don't know if I'm going to finish it all in one sitting, so there might be a couple of weird camera angles. I may switch shirts a couple times. But it should be fun. So I'm going to get started on that, and I'll see you guys when we have a rough draft. So I have a rough draft version. It does not look pretty. That will come later. Like I said, slightly different webcam angles. I moved into my college dorm about a week ago, and I'm still trying to figure out how I set things up to record videos. So bear with me while I do that. But if we go into... I think it's that one. Yes, it is. Welcome to Unity. So we have our scene over here where we have the amount of marbles in each hand on this side. These squares right here are signifying the hands, and then we have how much each guess is as well. So if I hit play, as you can see, each hand has 10 marbles. Then I'm gonna guess 3. And then our opponent guessed 4. So they take 4 of my marbles, so now as you can see here, they have 14, and I have 6. I'm gonna guess 3 again. This time it was even, nothing happens. I'm gonna guess 3 again. I had 3, they had 1, so I get 3 of their marbles, meaning they now have 11, and I have 9. I'm gonna guess 3 again, and they guessed 1 again, so I now get another 3 of their marbles. I guessed 3, they guessed 4, so now they have 12, and I have 8. I'm gonna guess 4 this time. I guessed more than they did. I guessed 4 again, they guessed 0. So now we have 16, they have 4, and we guess again. And then there's, made a slight mistake there. I'll manually do it, but there's a you win text that comes up once one player has 20. So that's how the game works. Like I said, it's not the most pretty looking, but the point of these rough drafts is not for it to be pretty looking, it's just for it to function. And this is the time that I took that the most into heart since I've been recording this series, I will tell you guys that. So this entire thing runs off of one script. So I'm gonna walk you guys through that script. This is just our import statements, some pretty normal stuff. Then up here, we just have the variable declarations. I sort of put it into, because that's a thing you can do in Unity. I have it split into 3 things, so like the housings of the marble, the UI, and then the scores. When we start, what we do is we spawn 10 marbles in each hand. I have a for loop that goes 20 times, so from 0 to 19, which is 20 times. And then, you know, if I is even, it goes in one hand. If I is odd, it goes in the other hand. Here are some random float values so that you can go from, sorry, I lost my words there. So that you can switch where each ball is being spawned. If you notice, when I hit play, they all go in different spots. This is very intentional. When I was spawning them in the same spot, they'd either just stack up really high, or they would go everywhere because it was a lot of game objects at once, all interacting with each other. So those are just random values for that. This defines the position, and then here we instantiate the game object of ball, and then we say, you know, the parent object of the ball is the other marble holder, so the AIs. Then down here, it's the exact same thing, it's just putting it into our marble holder, or the humans, the actual player. Then we're setting the guess panel to true. I was hoping to have it be more of like a turn-based thing, where you have like a 3, 2, 1 countdown. I may get around to that, but it works just fine as is. So I'll see if I get around to that. In our update function, which is called once per frame, we're essentially just setting the amount text and the guess text, and then we also have down here just the logic that says, you know, if either holder has 20 marbles in it, then set active for the win text to make it say you won. And what I mean by the holders is I have a game object that is positioned up here. It's not positioned at either of the squares. And all it does is it houses these marbles. So I'm specifically putting them as a child of those holders so that I then can go count the objects that are children of them, and that comes into play on the button click down here. So we have our guess, which we get from the input field, and then we have the other guess, which is a random integer within the range of 0 and 5. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I guess I might need to change that to 6 to make it actually 0 and 5. I've not seen it throw out a 5 yet. Then we have an if logic that says if the other guess is greater than my guess, then we execute that for loop, and then we have an else if that says if the other guess is less than my guess, do the following thing, and then we have the else that just is there so that nothing happens whenever we guess the same thing. If you think about it, let me put it this way. If you've seen the show, it is the equivalent of when they hold out, or if they're playing this game, right? The guessing is the equivalent of, you have marbles in your hand and you open your hand. I am not good enough with Unity animations to be able to animate that, so we're probably just gonna have like an open hand, and we'll go with that, but it's essentially the same thing. And then this logic right here is the logic of, the two players looking at each other and counting the marbles and going, oh, you have more, or oh, I have more. And the else is the equivalent of the two players looking at and counting the marbles and seeing that they're the same. I just hit my desk drawer. That hurt my hand. So to go through the logic of this little bit of code that I've highlighted here, we are first of all, we have a for loop that runs for the amount of time as the other guess is, and we're getting a game object that I'm naming ball, and it is the first child of the marble holder. And it works the same way for the other one as well. It's the exact same for both of them. The code blocks are just in slightly random orders. We're then randomizing position again. We're creating the position variable, and then we are setting the transform of the ball to be the other marble holder. Now that doesn't automatically set the position, so then down here, we're going and setting the position. And if we're moving 3 balls over, it runs 3 times. If we're moving 4, it runs 4. If we're moving 1, we're running 1. And it works the exact same down here. And that's basically all there is to this game. It is a really, really simple game, but it's a lot of fun to play. So, the next step in this series, as always, is for me to go through and create this final draft that makes it visually appealing to play and hopefully makes it make a little more sense and clean some things up as well. So I'm going to do that, and I will see you guys when I have a final draft.
Alright, so we now have a completed version of this game. I apologize for the delay. I believe I filmed the first part of this video in August, I want to say, and it is now the middle of March. So it's taken like 6 months to film this video. Fortunately for me, I've had a lot of stuff going on. I'm working 2 jobs in college. Unfortunately, that means I don't have a lot of free time currently, and the free time I have has been a lot of relaxing and trying to make sure I don't burn myself out before the end of the semester in about 2 months. So no promises that any other of these videos will be completed. I just happened to have a ton of time today, and it worked out. But we now have a completed version of the game, so we're going to go ahead and take a look. Basically, there were not a lot of changes made. I'll walk through the changes in the code that I made, but when we play the game now, I'm going to see if... Okay, I don't think I can do that. I was going to see if I can make it maximize on gameplay. But basically, now when you play the game, as you can see, we have marbles that are actual marble looking. It's just a random color combination generated by a script that we'll walk through. Fair warning, I did have Claude generate it for me, so we'll see how I do at explaining. But there's actual looking marbles now, and also I replaced the little platforms with hands. Basically, I want it to look like you were actually playing a game, and you can kind of like hand it. There could be a 2-player version. That's not something I want to sit here and spend the time building, but it's definitely a possibility of things that could happen in the future if this was to be like an actual mobile game. The other UI thing that I did was I went in and these text boxes right here, I just went in and I added a little bit of a background to them to differentiate them from the background and from the hand a little bit, because it got a little hard to see. I could probably do more with that, but at the end of the day, we're going for functionality here. We're not going for the greatest looking product. But the guess mechanism works the same way, so we're going to try and win here. Just 5s every time is a pretty good way. And we now have the screen that says you win, and then there's the option to play again. And when you hit play again, it takes it a second, but it refreshes everything. Each player now has 10 marbles, and you can start guessing again. And if I enter 1, which is a pretty darn good way to lose, there's a panel that pops up that says you lose and gives you the option to play again. So that is the final draft of this game. Let's walk through how it works really quickly. I need to pull up the marble texture thing. So to walk through the changes to the marble game manager, obviously up here I just added another variable for the lose screen. The only changes that I made up here was basically just going through and making it so that it was a little bit narrower of a spawn area. As I was going through, a lot of the marbles were falling off of the hand, so I had to go through and just make it a little bit smaller of a spawn area so that that wasn't happening. And then, yeah, that's all that was there. The other change that I made was I made a start game function, and it is literally the exact same thing as before, just not in the start function, it is in start game, so that way when we hit the play again button, we can start the game and we don't have to go through the start function, because you can't call that on its own. You would have to like reboot the scene, and that's a whole lot of trouble, as I found out the hard way at one point. The other thing I did was add in this clear marbles function. So basically all it does is it goes through and it says, you know, for each object, and we're going to call that object child, in the marble holder, we're going to destroy that object. And it does that for both the marble holder and the other marble holder, so both hands essentially. The only thing I did in update was change logic so that if the other person got 20, it pops up a lose screen, and if you got 20, it pops up a win screen. Button click, again, nothing changed in here apart from the fact that it was, 1 before and now it's 0.75. And then the only other thing I added in this script was the play again button, which sets the winning and losing panels to false, clears the marbles, and starts the game. And as we saw, that works pretty well. Now here's the fun part. Here is the part of the Claude generated script. So up here, we are defining a couple of variables. We're defining the resolution we want, the scale we want, and the turbulence. I don't know all that much about what the turbulence does, and I apologize for that. Up here, we are creating a new texture that is the resolution by the resolution. So this texture is 512 by 512. Just for fun, I'm going to change that to 1024, and it's going to make a pretty different texture when we load the game. Up here, we are generating two colors, a random color for the base and a random color for the vein. These are, I forget what all the parameters are in here, but that's not important. The bottom line is these two lines are generating those colors. And then in here, we're saying for each pixel, oh, it's a nested for loop. This is going to take forever. For those who have taken data structures, this would be a O of n squared. But basically, this goes through and assigns a random pixel to a random color, and that's how you get the patterns. So having saved that, I'm really curious to see how long this takes, because it should take absolutely forever. I have a lot of things open on my laptop right now, as you can see by my touch bar. So not much happened, but it's a little bit sharper of an image. And just for fun, I'm going to change this to 2048, which is a really high resolution texture, by the way, because I'm curious just how noticeable it is. Oh, wow, that's actually pretty noticeable. But yeah, so that's the changes I've made, and we now have a completely functioning marbles game. So that's going to be it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to subscribe, do all that. Hopefully the next one in this series won't take 6 months, and I'll be able to actually churn some of these out over the summer. But other than that, yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.